Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. Your spotlight for June 13th, 2023. Where's the year gone? I say that all the time. Solid week of books. Nothing blew me away, but nothing was terrible. So, yeah, we'll break them all down. What do you think, Rock?
Yeah, it was. I just finished reading all of them. I haven't really processed all of them in my mind yet. I'll do that as we go through it. I'm still feeling generally happy with DC moving forward. There's a couple of things. There's at least one comic that removing from my pull list, and there's another one that's going in the wrong direction. But the most of them, I'm still pleasantly surprised with. I'm still the spawn of the DCU is better than Future State. It's better than what came before, and I think DC is slowly, gradually moving in the right direction. There's still some hiccups, but I'm sure we'll talk about it.
My guess on what you're pulling from your list is Wildcats. I think you're dropping Wildcats.
You're absolutely right. I am. Yeah.
I knew it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about it when we get there. I don't want to jump ahead. So, well, we'll kick it off. Joker. It's Joker Incorporated is the name of the story. Batman Incorporated is a series, issue number 9. Writers Ed Brisson, John Timms does the art, Rex Locus on colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. I want to start out. So, this was the first book that I read. It just so happened to be listed, as first when we got the books and in the press preview, and I read it like last week, I think like last Thursday or something, well before it's hitting stands. And as soon as I finished reading, I messaged Rocky and I said, man, the next issue of Batman Incorporated, it's crazy, and I love it. So I'll talk about what Brisson is doing that is just like holy crap in a second. But before I talk about the story itself, I want to give a shout out to John Timms, the artist. I think both yourself and myself and Trevor from Dark Knight Nation that used to do reviews before he became a creator, we all sort of had the same feeling about John Timms' art. Now Timms, he really got his first sort of semi-regular gig at DC doing Harley Quinn with Jimmy and Amanda when Chad Harden needed a break. But the first time I really experienced his art was on the Superman book. I think it was called Superman Man of Tomorrow. It was a Future State book
Thank you.
that was far in the future, and it was the one that starred John Kent rather than
I think that was Man of Metropolis, wasn't it? Superman of Metropolis or something.
You're right. Yep, that's exactly what it was called.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And we all felt the same way about Tim's art. And maybe it was because he'd come off Harley Quinn where everything's zany and going 100 miles an hour, and the art just felt busy, and not busy in a way that complemented the story, but just sort of busy, and the design and the layouts and everything. It felt more crowded than it needed to be. It wasn't in service to the story. I got to give all credit to John Timms. The art he's giving us here is so good. It's so spectacular. It's so dynamic. It's quiet when it needs to be. It's kinetic when it needs to be. And the line work's exceptional. It just feels really dynamic. At the end of the day, this is a globe-trotting, action-packed book, right? Like, we have all these different characters, sometimes too many characters, as Rocky and I have talked about, and they're jumping all over the globe. They're led by Ghostmaker. They're endorsed by Batman. So there's a lot. There's a lot happening, a lot of action every issue, and Tim's art is really showcasing that really, really well. So him, the colors are fantastic as well. So I'm really enjoying the art on this book. It's been a real highlight of the title, like from the first issue. So I want to give credit where credit is due, because it's just fantastic. And like I said, the colors by Rex Locus are outstanding as well. But then as far as the issue goes, yeah, this Joker Incorporated idea, Joker taking a hint from Batman saying, okay, well, if Batman can have Batmen all over the world, then I want Jokers all over the world too, right? Like, a Batman needs a Joker. That's what the Joker thinks. But of course, it's not enough to just, hey, I'm the Joker and I'm going to have these sort of lookalikes or followers or what have you. And unbeknownst even to the people that are like, yeah, I'll become a Joker. Oh, my green screen just dropped. I'll fix that in a second. But anyway, he's booby trapped these other guys. He's booby trapped these jokers. They don't even know it. They've got, a bomb in their heads, almost Suicide Squad like, where the Joker with the press of a button or flick of a switch can have them exude Joker toxin, Joker gas, and everybody within, I can't remember how much they said, within a mile or 600 feet or something like that is infected. They can all be killed by Joker venom. And so and the Joker has made it where they can't be, if they're captured or these members of Batman Incorporated do anything other than just kill them outright. Like if they try to stop them or delay or anything like that, the Joker toxin, the Joker venom will be released. So basically what the Joker's doing, he's playing mind games with Ghostmaker. He's making it where Ghostmaker's made this promise to Batman that he won't kill. And the Joker is trying to test that. And so toward the end of the issue, when one of these Joker followers is captured or is confronted by a couple of members of Batman Incorporated, Ghostmaker calls him, is like, you can't save him. You can't try to detain him. You can't handcuff him and try to figure things out. You got to kill him. You got to kill him. And again, it's an age-old philosophical question. I think the traditional problem that people are given is, if there's a trolley filled with people and then there's somebody like tied to the tracks, you could either let the trolley just roll over the person and kill the person that's tied to the tracks, or you could shift the trolley to make it go on a different track, but then like all the people on the trolley would die, like crash, it would derail or something like that. So what do you choose, right? The life of one, the life of many. A lot of people say, well, you choose, whatever the is going to give the most benefit, the most people are going to live. And these are villains. These are scumbags. But there is that heroic ideal that you could almost say arrogant at times to say, no, we can save everybody. So that's the dilemma. Ghostmaker's got to make the call. And it may be that he'll make the call and the members of Batman Incorporated might not agree. They're all different with their own personalities, their own philosophical outlooks. So it's really, really interesting what Ed Brisson is doing, and I'm really digging it. So I can't wait to see where this goes. What are your thoughts on it, Rock? Enjoyed it as much as I did?
I did. I do think there's a lot of moving parts, but there's enough excitement going on here that I remained sort of intrigued by the narrative, because the reality is what the Joker has done, he's really captured, he's really showed up at the worst possible moment for Batman Incorporated. And because the Joker is basically, he's given the ultimate test to Batman Incorporated, to Ghostmaker, saying, look, all my Jokers, I don't care if they live or die, but the only way out is that you have to kill the Jokers. You either kill my Jokers, and that'll be all good, but if you try to save their life and save the people around them, everyone dies. So just kill the Jokers. In other words, the Joker is saying, you think you're like Batman? Batman would figure out a way not to win the day and not kill. But Ghostmaker, you're incompetent. Batman Incorporated's incompetent. Batman might think he's got Batman Incorporated, but this Batman Incorporated, nah. It might be called Batman Incorporated, but you guys, you're no Batman. You're no Batman. And there's only one Joker. And symbolically, the Joker doesn't care about his teammates, other members of Joker Incorporated. There's only one Joker, and I love the fact that Ed Brisson understands that. The Joker doesn't give a rat's ass about the other members of his team. It's Team Joker? No, there's only one Joker. Let's be blunt. And the Joker doesn't tolerate imitations, and he sure as hell isn't going to tolerate imitations in the form of Batman Incorporated. And I hasten to add something very, very important here that I think maybe we might be missing as readers, and that is, this comic book is called Batman Incorporated. It's not called Ghostmaker. So what I love about this is at the end of this issue, there is a battle. Ghostmaker tells all the members of Batman Incorporated to kill the Joker teammate that you happen to be fighting. And he tells Dark Ranger and Wingman to kill Corvus Call at the end, And Dark Ranger tries to prevent Wingman from killing Corvus Call with the instructions of Ghostmaker. Ghostmaker tells Dark Ranger and Wingman to kill Corvus Call. And of course, Dark Ranger tries to prevent Wingman from killing Corvus Call, and in the process, Dark Ranger, in preventing Wingman from giving a killing blow to Corvus, ends up getting stabbed by Corvus himself, which is very interesting because what I see here is Ghostmaker has already failed Batman Incorporated. He's failed his instructions from Batman. He's given up. He's given up on the code against killing because he doesn't know what to do. Batman wouldn't. But Ghostmaker has failed. And what's interesting here is Dark Ranger has not. Now, while at least one member, Wingman, has been stabbed, Dark Ranger was at least willing to still not kill, not deviate from the code against killing. I'm wondering if what Ed Brisson as the writer is going to do here is at the end of this day, who's to say Ghostmaker is going to remain the leader of Batman Incorporated? That's what I like about this. I'm beginning to question whether Ghostmaker is going to win the day. Maybe it's going to be another member of Batman Incorporated that steps up and wins the day and finds a way to win the day without killing. And it's not going to be Ghostmaker. It's going to be maybe Dark Ranger. It's going to be someone else. How's that for misdirection? Because I emphasize again, Ghostmaker is just the leader of this team. Who's to say it can't have another leader? And now, even if I'm wrong about that, it doesn't matter because I love this story. I love how Ghostmaker's being tested. I love how all the members of Batman Incorporated are being tested. I love Grey Wolf. I love the Knight. I love Dark Ranger, Wingman. I like how they're all different characters in their own right. I love the different iterations of the characters. I like the way that they're being challenged, and it makes me. I'm sure Ghostmaker right now is appreciating just how difficult Batman has it upholding that code against killing, and how easily convenient it is to just kill your enemy when it's the easiest. And I think that's the joke. That's what the Joker is trying to say to Batman Incorporated, in particular Ghostmaker. So I don't know how Ed Brisson's going to wrap this up. I don't know how many members of Batman Incorporated are going to survive. Lord knows there's enough characters here. He could probably kill a few off and we're not going to blink an eye. But I like where this is going. Full props to him. I had a quick comment on your art on John Timms. John Timms' art has grown on me. I frankly wasn't a fan of it when his drawing renderings of of John Kent. I wasn't a big fan of it, to be honest. I thought just the rendering of it. I thought his backgrounds were not particularly great, but he has improved dramatically. The backgrounds here, John Timms is drawing. I mean, they're all over the world. They're from Melbourne, Australia, to Lampeter, Wales, to Gotham City. They're all over the place, different settings. It feels like we're reading a James Bond movie, and the backgrounds here, you get a feeling that this does feel like a world setting, thanks totally to John Timms' amazing art and his ability to distinguish the members of Batman Incorporated. I mean, let's be blunt here. My frustration in identifying the various members of Batman Incorporated, that's on me. It's not the fault of the artist John Timms. So overall, I'm impressed.
Yeah, one thing I'll mention about you started off by saying there's only one Joker. Joker doesn't care about anybody but Joker.
Yeah.
That kind of goes back to what Killer Croc was saying last week when we were talking about the man who stopped laughing. That was kind of the point, that version of the Joker or what have you, saying, why does nobody like me or this and that, which kind of points to that injured version of the Joker not being the actual real Joker. So I guess we'll see. All right, well, let's move on. Up next, we have Wildcats issue number 8, Bigger Cages, Longer Chains, written by Matthew Rosenberg. Danny Kim and Michelle Bandini are the artists. Elmer Santos on colors, Farron Delgado on letters. So, yeah, I correctly guessed this is the one you're dropping. Give us your thoughts.
Sorry, I'm having frustrations with my mouse. Well, while I said I'm dropping this title, it's not that it doesn't have some potential here. It's just, I just find that it's jumping around too much. And I think that a mistake that maybe that Matthew Rosenberg has made is that I think he's assumed a little bit too much from the reader, or at least from this reader. This is obviously just my opinion. I generally really liked what Matthew Rosenberg did in that initial 6-issue grifter run in the first 6 issues of Batman Urban Legends, and I was really looking forward to Wildcats. This just feels like it just feels like it's going into it just feels directionless. We've got espionage chaos here. I'm not sure who the bad guy is. I'm not sure if it's is it Halliday? Is it Marlowe? Is it Amanda Waller? Who's doing what? I'm not really sure, and I'm not really sure it really matters, or if we're even supposed to care. Uh, we finally we're by the end. This is the 8th issue. We know that the Court of Owls was involved. They were teased at the end of issue 1, I believe. And now here at the end of issue 8, it's now revealed that Halliday is a member of the Court of Owls. In the middle of this issue, John Lynch shows up. We've got Voodoo Lady, Lady Tron Zealot, Cedric, Michael Cray, basically in our world, in our universe, trying to navigate, seemingly on the side of Marlowe, trying to navigate a betrayal of Marlowe orchestrated by Halliday, who's utilizing other members of Wildcats against them. This has been going on since issue 1 in different capacities. Meanwhile, Grifter, who was supposedly killed but not killed, ends up, his body was replaced by another body in another part of the universe. He's in another Earth, and in the other Earth, he's teamed up with alternate versions of the Raven, Damien, and a whole slew of others, including his brother Max, who is dead in our universe, but is alive in this other universe. And I'm not sure what the point is. Why is it's in a completely divorced storyline, completely unrelated to the main narrative. And if I didn't know better, I think it was just to have Grifter be able to fight a different version of Mr. Freeze and to be able to kill Deathstroke. And so I have to admit there was some satisfaction watching Zealot, another universe's Zealot, slit the throat of Damian Wayne, who was still his annoying self in the other universe when he was in that more annoying stage that he got over during Williamson's Robin run. In any event, this feels like Rosenberg is just, he's clearly having fun playing in the sandbox, and he's got sandboxes in different universes. And that's all well and good. I just don't feel that this is really going anywhere. I don't feel this is really a cohesive story as it could be, because I actually find myself openly wondering here, where is this going? And I'm not really sure why I'm supposed to care. This feels like it has too many moving parts, and even maybe too many players. I'm not really sure where this is going, but I'm more frustrated than anything else. And I'm also a little bit frustrated that, and this is a very Matthew Rosenberg story, but I find that he's really played hard on the sarcasm. I'm a fan of Matthew Rosenberg's humor. I generally find a lot of his dialogue funny. Now, some people don't, but I do. So it's not so much that. I've reached a point where a lot of the dialogue and the tropes and the patterns of dialogue and the characters, it seems to be repetitive after a while. And I'm still not sure where this story is going or really what's at stake and why exactly should I care. We're 8 issues in, and I still don't know what do the Court of Owls want to do. They want to take over Halo Corporation, I think, which maybe is kind of interesting, but we shouldn't have had to wait 8 issues for that hand to be played. It just was done in too much of, in my view, it just wasn't well paced, well structured, and it's somewhere along the line it lost me, despite the fact that there's some really cool scenes here, but they took place in another universe that has nothing to do with this story and with the main story. So I'm a little bit lost. So I can sit there and tell you what I really liked about this issue. It had some cool moments, but cool moments that really didn't have anything to do with our universe. And so it just feels unfocused. And I hate to say it, but I have to opt out. I'll still review this, but it's not rewarding me, and it's too slow a tale. It's got to reward the reader with something of substance, and so far it's been devoid of the type of substance that I want to see in an espionage, these types of stories. So, what do you think? Oh, you're on mute.
Sure am. I actually thought, I hate to say it was an improvement, because I don't think the title has been bad at all. But I guess what I'll say is the narrative, you mentioned this other universe feels like the story that's going on there feels completely removed from what's going on in the main universe. And you're right. But it feels like this is the first issue where I feel like they're starting to turn toward each other to where those two narratives will come together. Obviously, we know the grifter that's in the other universe uh, is the grifter from our universe, and he's the grifter that his teammates are looking for. So eventually, it's going to come together, and I have a feeling it's going to be really satisfying when it does. Now, that being said, I can't say that there are no issues, no pun intended, with the story and with the plotting and the pacing, as you mentioned. So I talked about this book early on being like, if you're looking for some fast paced sort of popcorn action book without any sort of politics, this is not the book for you. This book is all about politics. It's all about betrayal and machinations and oblique sort of espionage type stories, and it will pay off. I have full confidence it will pay off eventually, but I could completely understand people that get tired of waiting because Wildcats, that title, obviously started by Jim Lee way back in the day at Image. It sort of evokes a certain kind of fun uh, summer blockbuster type feel, right? Where you can kind of turn your brain off and just read it, and you get great art and a lot of cool moments, like you said. But the overall story doesn't have that much depth. This is sort of the other side of the coin of that. This is all about depth. This is all about things 7 issues previous finally paying off, and that's what's going to happen. If there's any mistake Matthew Rosenberg has made, and again, I'll take the blame for it. I don't have like this huge overarching knowledge of Wildstorm, of Wildcats, the Wildstorm universe, Authority and Stormwatch and all that. I just don't. I haven't read enough of that stuff comprehensively to really understand. I think obviously Matthew Rosenberg has, and he loves this stuff. So anybody was really invested in that interconnected Wildstorm universe back in the day, they're probably getting way more out of this than I am because, yeah, John Lynch shows up, and I sort of know who he is, but not really. I don't have enough context with the Damonites and with Marlowe and with these characters overall to really understand and see what Rosenberg is hinting at and the Easter eggs he's dropping and that sort of thing. So you can take it one of two ways. You can say, well, that's a mistake, right? Like if this is supposed to be new reader friendly or supposed to really pull the Wildcats into the regular DC universe, it's not really doing that exceptionally well. And it may be that in the end, it does all make sense and it is cohesive and it ends up as a win. But right now, it's not there yet. But what I will say about this issue in particular, this is the first time since early on where I've read an issue of Wildcats and I thought, you know what? I want to go back and reread the previous issues. Like I didn't have time, but this issue number 9 made me want to go back, or issue number 8 made me want to go back and read the first 7 issues. So all at once, kind of in one sitting, so I could have more context. What am I missing? What have I forgotten? That sort of thing. So there's a lot of potential. It hasn't paid off yet, but I think it's getting better. I think it's getting closer to a resolution. Now, whether or not it does pay off, whether or not I have enough knowledge of the Wildstorm universe for it to work, that remains to be seen. But I did enjoy it, and I thought the Danny Kim and Michelle Banditti art were great. And maybe it was what you said. Maybe it was just the fact that we're still continuing on. I do feel like the storylines are coming together. But on top of all that, we did have the cool moments. We did see Damian, get killed, kind of a cathartic thing when he was in that annoying stage, like you mentioned. We did see Deathstroke defeated, something that can't happen in the regular universe. We did see Captain Cold's cold gun explode and him shatter into, 1,000 pieces. Those are cool. Those are cool moments. And again, I think, I'm a fan of spy stuff and espionage stuff and that sort of thing. And I think that's what type of story this is. I just wish I had a better understanding of people's motivations, who's betraying who and why. And again, I don't know if it's my lack of context with the Wildstorm universe or if Rosenberg just hasn't laid it all out for us yet. So we'll have to wait and see. But overall, I feel like this title still has my attention. So, all right. Up next, we have Spirit World number 2. This is from writer Alyssa Wong. Hanning is the artist. Sebastian Cheng on colors. Janice Chiang on letters. This is a limited series. We know there's only 6 issues, so I I'm gonna say that's the reason that we had a bit of a time jump between the end of last issue and the beginning of this issue. We know that Xanthi Zhao is trapped in the real world. She is somebody unique. She's this new character in DC, this Asian character who's sort of not dead, but sort of not alive. She's kind of in the middle. She can travel back and forth in the spirit world. She was killed as a very young child. She runs in at the end of the last issue. She runs into her mother on the street. Her mother's, first of all, if she was killed so long ago, I mean, I guess a mother would recognize. Like, I don't know if I would recognize my kid, 18 years later. There's a lot of changes that happen physically between like a 4 or 5 year old and a 18-year-old. But she recognizes her, and then this issue starts off, and they're at the home of her parents, eating dinner, and it's like, how do you get from point A to point B? It lacked that context, and I felt like I needed that. I needed that context. But it is interesting because, to my point of, hey, you're not the same person. Her mother, clearly there's things going on that we don't understand, because her mother seems to have some magical ability as well. When Xanthi goes to leave, saying this is not where I belong, her mother tries to stop her by using her name, and that's a thing in magic, right? Like, if you have power over something, if you know its name. She knows who John Constantine is, even though she pretends not to. So her binding spell that specifically names John Constantine works. Her binding spell that names Xanthi doesn't, because Xanthi's not that person anymore, not how the mother perceived her or them to be. She's not, I did it again, they are non-binary. So, and the mother had a certain perception of what Xanthi was. They're no longer that. The binding spell didn't work. So that was interesting. But again, there was some context missing there. And again, I won't blame Alyssa Wong. I'm sure it was a matter of real estate happening, but it is interesting, and it brings in some stakes for Xanthi in terms of emotionality and obviously her trauma that she's still trying to deal with. So that was interesting as well. And then her Xanthi's sister that she never really met actually gave her this origami wreath of flowers. We know one of Xanthi's abilities is the ability to manifest things from paper, from origami, because in the spirit world that she travels to, the way people that inhabit that spirit world get things is by somebody offering a paper sacrifice. You make whatever out of paper, you burn it at their gravesite, what have you, and it manifests in the spirit world for them. So that wreath, that origami wreath, actually allows Xanthi and John Constantine to finally get back to the spirit world, or at least attempt to. And during the attempt, when they're traveling in between the spaces between the spirit world and our world, something follows them to the spirit world, and that's where the issue ends. So interesting. I'm really starting to like Xanthi as a character. That being said, we've only scratched the surface yet. I think we need a little bit more in terms of what their personality is, where they're coming from, that sort of thing. Constantine hasn't really felt like he's had a role yet in the series. He sort of just feels like window dressing at this point. But with Cass Kane version of Batgirl trapped in the spirit world, there's some more stakes going on there as well. So really curious now that Xanthi's back in the spirit world to have her and Constantine meet up with Cassandra Cain and find out really what's going on. We don't even know who the big bad is. Like, there's a disconnect still. We've only seen hints of who the actual antagonist of the series is. So again, although it feels like at times there's some context missing, it may just be that Alyssa Wong has the story she's telling just may be a little bit too big for 6 issues. So we're losing some important bits of information here or there, but that remains to be seen. We'll see how it all plays out in the end. But the art by Henning is fantastic. Color works great. So visually, it's a very pleasing comic for sure. What were your thoughts on it, Rocky?
I was a little bit confused by this issue, but I'm actually, I got some questions that I think the answers might be interesting, because I really don't know what Alyssa Wong was trying to convey, but it might have been something, dare I say, profound, but I'm missing it, but maybe I can correctly guess it. For the life of me, I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense to me that her mother's binding spell would work on John Constantine, somebody she does not, in fact, know. I mean, she doesn't know John Constantine. She might have heard of him, but she doesn't know him. But it works on him, but it doesn't work on her own daughter because and I don't understand when she refers to her daughter's name why the letterer made the name all scribbly. Well, she knows her daughter's name. What is that referring to? Is Alyssa Wong is they is they trying to convey the idea that because she's non-binary, she's no longer referenced by her birth name anymore, and so her mother misidentifies her in the magic spell? Is that what Alyssa Wong is trying to say? Because otherwise,
yeah, I think that's exactly what they're trying to say.
Okay, because if all right,
they are not that person that their mother's identifying them. You know,
right.
When you refer to somebody who's transitioned by their old name, it's called dead naming them. That name is dead, so very meta.
Okay. Well,
life and death.
Well, I'll be straight up. I think that's a really dumb plot point. Really dumb. But I will also say that I am really dumb as a reader because you just educated me. Straight up. I got no idea that trans people or non-binary people refer to their birth name as dead names. First of all, what a horrible thing to do. But whatever. If explain that to me, explain the logic of that to me. I don't understand that. I don't explain that logic. And why should I fault a parent for having the audacity to actually call Xanthi by their birth name when Xanthi, at the beginning of this issue, is shown to be almost an infant, 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 years old, being hit by a car. Surely her identity wasn't known at that young age if she was non-binary. So why are you faulting a parent for weeping and so desperate to have you back in their life? It just seems cruel, and I don't think that was Alyssa Wong's intention. But what I'm frustrated here is there was an opportunity here to educate me as a reader, which I can appreciate that you just helped me along, okay? But I think this was a missed opportunity here because of a lack of clarity in the writing. Because I was taken aback by the scribbliness of the name. I didn't get that. I guess I guessed right, but I think that there was a really missed opportunity here. It also, I have to assume that Xanthi character is upset with her parents because her daughter refers to his daughter. And I guess are we to assume that her parents didn't like her chosen identity, or there was some issue to do with her non-binariness or trans, if she's a trans man or a trans woman. And again, I apologize. I'm trying hard to say the right pronoun here because John Constantine refers to Xanthi as they and them, and I want to do the same thing in the spirit of recognizing the pronoun. I found it, this is a comic that made me feel that I needed to know more and I'd get more educated. And frankly, these are the types of comics that you have an opportunity to educate readers like myself. And I think it was a missed opportunity. And ultimately, I think this comic could have been more clear in that regard. I would have appreciated more clarity, but maybe that's just me. Clearly, you didn't have that issue with it, but I felt a little bit. It was a little bit lost on me in terms of the struggle that Xanthi, that clearly they is having, and Constantine seemed to intuitively know what they were going through. And yet I'm not sure why he would, because it's not like he can relate, but he seems to know that what her chosen pronoun is. But it's never really spelled out for the readers except in advertisements. That's supposed to be in the story. If you're not putting it in the story, it's because you're backing down and you're being a coward. The purpose of this should be to educate the readers. I don't feel like I know Xanthi. I don't really, it's not really spelled out. It's vague, and it's a missed opportunity. I'm going to cut Alyssa Wong a lot of slack because this is a sensitive topic, and I think this is a topic that can ruffle some feathers. But I am interested in this character, but I have to admit, too, that I think there was a missed opportunity here in the manner in which this story was told. But I don't know. That's what I think.
John Constantine is bisexual, so I don't. Of course, he understands. he's going to relate to Xanthi better than I can, as a straight guy, straight white guy. So that's first. Second of all, it goes to what I was saying. There may just not be enough room. And yeah, I'll cut Alyssa along a lot of slack too, because not only is it a sensitive subject, and I don't think she's being cowardly at all, it goes back to maybe there's just not enough space, and you run the risk, right? Like if you sort of break it all down and spoon feed those of us that maybe need some education on pronouns and dead naming and that sort of thing, then you run the risk of feeling like you're being like really condescending to a certain subject of the certain segment of the audience, another segment of the audience who this may be speaking to on a much more personal level, who are part of the LGBTQ community, are going to be like, why are you wasting time spelling this out? So it's a very tough position to be in and a very tough line to walk.
Yeah.
I'll give Alyssa, like I said, a lot of credit, cut her some slack, cut them some slack. I know what their pronouns are. So we don't know what editorial is saying. And so it's really tough. At least they are, if they're doing an advertising, at least they're doing it, right?
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. Maybe it should be a little more clear in the book, but again, it's like, how do you put it in the book? And there's no way this book's going to please everybody, right? You can't please all the people all the time. So I got to think, like I said, it's an issue of space, but I totally agree with you that this is an opportunity. It's a DC comic. There are DC fans out there that are reading this, maybe for no other reason than it's a DC book or it's a DC magic. And they don't have any idea about dead naming or the LGBT community and that sort of thing. And yeah, there are some missed opportunities, but as far as the family stuff, again, I go back, it's got to be just in terms of space. The first issue started with a little narrative about a little girl, a very similar scene, almost gets hit by a car. Xanthi pulls her up from getting washed down a storm drain because she dodged out of the way of a car. Whether or not that was the moment that Xanthi died, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Maybe Xanthi was a little older before she passed away, and there was friction between her parents between their parents because, they were wanting to be non-binary. Their parents pushed back. We just don't have enough information yet to know. Because I take your point. Like, if Xanthi did pass away at like 4 years old, first of all, I can't imagine they were aware of their sexual orientation at that young of an age. Maybe they were, I don't know, seems a little bit of a stretch. But yeah, how could you fault the mother for then calling them by the old name? But I think my point still stands that that's no longer who they are. And whether or not she knows John Constantine personally or not, she knows the name John Constantine. That is the name he goes by. That is how he self-identifies. He self-identifies as John Constantine. And John Constantine is known, right, in the DC universe.
Well, I'm just saying, if John decided that for this one moment, I'm gonna, you can't avoid a magic trick by deciding just instantly. I just decided my name is Jace, not Rocky anymore, to avoid a magic trick. I mean, it just there's a silliness factor to it that I believe I know what Alyssa Wong was trying to say. She was trying to make a statement about, or they were trying to make a statement about identity. I get it. And I think it's a noble effort. And I like the use of the lettering to show the scribbly name. I can see the creative inspiration. I can see more clearly what she was trying to do. I think, but I really do think, I'm sure I'm not the only one that might miss that in the reading of this. But maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But
no, I think 100%. I mean, even when I first read it, I'm like, wait, why is that scribbled out? And then after I thought, I had to put some effort into figuring it out. And again, there may be a segment of the audience that are trans, where, it's very intuitive for them. I don't have that life experience. So, but anyway, it'd be interesting to have Alyssa on to talk about it and have it more clear. So I don't know. We'll see. All right, well, let's move on. Green Lantern #2 from our buddy Jeremy Adams as the writer. Art is by Zermanico, colors by Romulo Fardo Jr., letters by Dave Sharp. I have a specific gripe with this issue. I'm going to let you go first because I'm curious to see if you're going to feel about it the way that I do. So what were your thoughts on Green Lantern #2?
I think that I didn't find that a lot I didn't find the story move forward a lot in this issue. I think that this issue is sort of a segue into Night Terrors, But what I enjoyed in this issue the most was the humor aspect of it. This was Hal Jordan having fun. And I like the fact that that the story itself in this second issue of Green Lantern by Jeremy Adams is called "Nice Guys Finish First," and it's funny. Hal Jordan never struck me as. It's interesting. He doesn't necessarily strike me as like the nice guy. He's sort of like the cocky Tom Cruise type, and but he this starts. This flashes back to when it confirms that he willed his power ring into existence from the Manhunter armor that he had when he was battling the Manhunter in the first issue here. And it shows him essentially having fun with his new ring that he just literally willed into existence. Because that was not clear that he willed it into existence. I got the impression in the first issue that he had his existing Green Lantern ring, but that it was just dead and that he powered it up through the Manhunter armor. But he actually created a brand new ring from sheer willpower, which is pretty cool. And the fact that he fights this demolition team and he has fun with them and he makes them think that there's a horror element. He scares them. He has fun with them. He creates some ghosts and dead people saying, "Join us in eternity." And he's just having fun. He's poking fun at the bad guys. And of course they give up and they surrender. And he's just having a lot of fun. And he tests his powers. He flies up to the atmosphere. And then he ends up realizing that there are some limits and that it might be that he's restricted to Earth and that he can't leave Earth, which is kind of interesting that if that is true, that I like the fact with Green Lantern and Earth. I think many of us we're glad that Jeremy Adams grounds Hal Jordan on Earth, and particularly grounding her with Carol Ferris with Ferris Industries, because we know that Hal Jordan last issue he did a test flight, a test simulation. He ended up getting fired by Carol Ferris, but in this issue, it's quite comical. He works his way up to finally become a pilot for a private airliner that ends up flying privately members of Ferris aircraft, including Carol Ferris herself, with her fiance, Nathan. And it's really quite funny how he ends up getting the job, and it shows him throughout the day. Within 24 hours, he's one of the head pilots or the co-pilot on this private jet, that flies Carol Ferris around. A lot of great dialogue, and Hal Jordan, he's such a nice guy. He actually manages to befriend Nathan, the fiance of Carol Ferris, and Nathan even likes Hal, and he doesn't maybe appreciate the history that Carol and he doesn't realize, as he should be worried, because Hal Jordan he's a pretty studly guy, and he's not only a pilot, he's Green Lantern, but I'm not sure if Nathan truly understands that. But in any event, Carol and Nathan are in the plane, and Hal navigates his way back into the away from the cockpit and ends up talking to Carol, and then Nathan goes to the bathroom, and Hal makes sure he gets trapped in the bathroom. He locks him in the bathroom with his power ring, and then the issue just ends with the jet being essentially attacked by what I'm guessing are the sleepless nights of night terrors, the night terrors, because the night terror event begins next issue, and that'll be 2 issues long, and I'm guessing that these embodied sort of dark ghost-like skeleton creatures are the sleepless nights of Insomnia, who is the main villain in the Night Terrors event that will encompass most DC titles in July and August. So I enjoyed the issue. And and so I thought it was a lot of fun. And yeah, so what do you think?
So I had mixed feelings. I agree with you. It feels like the main plot didn't quite move forward as much as I would have wanted. It was great that we got confirmation that Hal created his own ring. That's what I assumed. It's not the first time that Hal's done it. We saw Robert Venditti do it in his run. I think maybe in the first issue of Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps, and DC Rebirth. So we know Hal has that ability. Never seen another Green Lantern do that. So I do appreciate that. I'm left not pointing the finger at Jeremy, but more pointing the finger at DC editorial. Like, I get that you wanted a Green Lantern book to be out there. I want a Green Lantern book to be out there, especially one that stars Hal Jordan. I feel like Jordan's my Green Lantern. But why did you start this if you're then just going to interrupt it and we're going to have 3 months off or 2 months off or whatever to do Night Terrors, which I could not possibly be less excited for a quote unquote event than I am with Night Terrors. I'm not a big horror guy. That being said, there's been some pretty good horror books that I've discovered, I'd say, over the last 5-6 years. I've become more of a fan of horror, and I recognize its storytelling ability, the kind of the unique niche that it fills, and I'm fine with that. But to interrupt a superhero line with a bunch of mashed up heroes and monsters,
Yeah.
I am so not looking forward to this. I am dreading it. And
Yeah.
so if it feels like it is not moving forward the plot a lot, probably because Jeremy Adams is like, well, I'm just getting started. I have this idea, for a Green Lantern book. You guys want me to do it. And then, I'm writing the first issue and I find out, by the way, we're going to go on a 2-month hiatus. At the end of issue 2, you needed to tie into this event that's going to take over the summer of DC. Like, how annoying! I haven't talked to Jeremy about this. I have no idea. I don't want to put any words in his mouth. This is purely on me.
Let me interject. Trevor and I in Calgary at the Calgary Expo, we did talk to Jeremy Adams specifically about this subject. And while I won't say everything that we talked about, the details, but I will say this, that Jeremy, the professional that he is, he knows the assignment. He was very happy to get Green Lantern, and he knew full well that he had to deal with Night Terrors. And I will say this, he did indicate, which I thought was very interesting. He said one of the first things that he openly questioned, he goes, well, Night Terrors is the idea that, is this insomnia character creating nightmares, which in many ways, at least in his mind, and as we talked about with him over a great steak dinner, that you would think that somebody with the greatest willpower of all the superheroes, that he wouldn't be too threatened by a night terror or a nightmare. I mean, if anybody can overcome a nightmare, you'd think it would be Hal Jordan. And all I will say to you is Jeremy Adams agrees with us. So if you're wondering how much of a threat a nightmare is to Hal Jordan, have some faith. The Insomnia is going to find out, probably, I'm guessing, that they never anticipated Hal Jordan. And so I'm just going to leave it like that. And I don't know how it resolves. He never said how it resolves, but all I know is that Jeremy Adams had fun with it. He went with it. He took the assignment. And he's hoping that us readers will enjoy the story. And all he said to Trevor and I is just remember that Hal Jordan has a lot of willpower. And so how do you think he'd handle the suggestion that a nightmare is going to scare him? And so that we know how Jeremy Adams powered up Wally West. We know how we redeemed Wally West. I think I can say with confidence that Jeremy Adams, the outcome with respect to Hal Jordan taking on Insomnia and the Sleepless Nights, I think you could probably venture a guess how that might end. And I'm confident that we're all going to be smiling at the end of it. And I'll leave it at that.
I guarantee I won't be smiling. The only way I'll be smiling is if Hal Jordan's willpower extends to DC editorial and they get rid of it before it never hits the stands. That's the only. And I know I'm being overly critical and I'm being overly harsh, because I haven't even read it yet and I shouldn't be judging it, but nobody needs this. Nobody wants this. Like, how many of these type of stupid events has DC done over the past 3 or 4 years? Look at Lazarus Planet. That was a complete waste of time. We're getting a good story. The first issue of Green Lantern was great. Second issue, just when it starts to build on that momentum, oh, and by the way, here comes this event. Here comes the last page with a bunch of purple guys flying around the sky. It's just stupid.
Yeah.
It's stupid. If you're going to get good writers, and Jeremy Adams is a fantastic writer, if you're going to get good writers and you're going to put your faith in them and believe in what their pitch is, then let them do their thing. Let them tell the story they want to tell. Quit interrupting it with all this bullshit. It's so frustrating. So this issue for me was ultimately a disappointment because, again, it didn't feel like enough happened, and I completely blame it on why is Jeremy going to get a bunch of stuff going? He can't end on a cliffhanger that deals with the Green Lantern storyline because he's got to deal with Night Terrors. It's so frustrating. And don't get me wrong, he's a great writer. He's a professional. He'll make it make sense. He'll work it in, and it'll be fine, and it'll be as enjoyable story as he can make it. But it's not necessary. It doesn't need to be there. If you believe in the pitch that he gave you, then let him tell that story. And if you want to have some crappy Night Terrors storyline, then just do it in its own book. Why is this one? Why is Night Terrors interrupting the regular DC line?
Yeah. Well,
that's my question.
Yeah. Well,
Lazarus Reign.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. We can say that for every DC title that Night Terrors is interrupting. The positive thing is that, I mean, it's gonna, I'm confident that Jeremy Adams has taken the lemon that has been handed to him and he's going to make some lemonade. And that's all we can do is have a little faith.
The positive thing about it is when I did my order for the summer months, I did my pre-orders. Man, I'm not buying any DC books.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, great. I'm saving money. I'm not buying any. DC burned me on Future State, right? You know that. Like I showed you the stack. It's literally 3 feet high. I didn't buy every ratio cover, but I bought every open order variant cover for Future State. And I also bought some ratios. I spent so much money on Future State, investing, wanting to back up DC, wanting to put, some faith in them. And I had a stack, I'm not kidding, 3 feet high of Future State books that were garbage. I would wipe my butt with them.
Now,
and
what about that Red X variant cover?
Awful. Except for Future State Aquaman. They're all awful and not worth your time. And it literally, like, I remember looking at it when I went to put them away after Future State was all said and done. I remember looking at them and feeling physically ill. Like it hurt. It literally hurt my stomach. I was nauseated looking at that stack of books and the amount of money I spent, and it was terrible. So no, I'm not going in on this at all. Not going in with Night Terrors. I didn't go in with Lazarus Reign. I will not. You're not going to fool me again, DC.
Yeah, I caved and I ordered all the Midnight variant covers because they all look kind of cool. So I violated all my bitching and whining against variant covers. I just ordered the Midnight variants for Night Terrors. At the very least, they'll look good on my shelf.
Yeah, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope I read Night Terrors and I absolutely love it. But I'm not a horror guy. It bugs me that it's interrupting the regular titles, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
Speaking of horror...
sorry. Speaking of horror.
Wait, actually, it's not the next one. I apologize. We actually have to review PKJ as a backup. We almost forgot to review the John Stewart Green Lantern story.
That's right. And I don't really have much to say because it felt like even less amount of forward momentum than we got in the main story. We did get confirmation, I guess, that the younger Lantern in question is named Shepherd, Lantern Shepherd. They call him that. John Stewart has some leftover godlike abilities from the Jeffrey Thorne run. It's still not something like I don't know. John Stewart's just not my Green Lantern. So to have him have all these extra abilities and be so godlike, but yet never seems to be able to solve any problems, like it's not working for me. So
yeah,
I'm anxiously awaiting PKJ for his series to start because I know it will make sense. If anybody's going to be able to make sense and to add context to what Jeffrey Thorne did, it's Philip Kennedy Johnson. So I'm looking forward to that. He's a great world builder. I know he'll make it make sense. But right now for me, it's like Jeffrey Thorne threw a bunch of stuff at the wall. In my mind, nothing stuck. And it's left John Stewart in this weird place. And somebody needs to come and sort of straighten things out. And that's what PKJ is going to do, I hope. I will say the art is really fantastic, the color work as well. So, but again, we're months and months away from that series. So it's a little disheartening from that respect. So what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I love the art by Montos, fantastic. Adriana Lucas the colorist, fantastic. PKJ's, this is the rise of the Revenant Queen. She's returning, and this is John Stewart sort of coming back from the sort of I got the impression he was sort of living in his own little he was living on Earth with his grandmother, and then he's called upon because I think he still has part of the maybe the god power that he has from Jeffrey Thorne's run. I I'm like you. I'm still a little bit confused. Jeffrey Thorne did so much with Jon Stewart, but so much was crammed into it. And I applaud Jeffrey Thorne. Had a lot of very creative ideas, but I think a lot of it felt very forced and shoehorned in order to artificially and very quickly prop up Jon Stewart. I not that I don't think Jon Stewart is worthy of that mantle, but I'm not sure exactly. I'm not even sure what timeline PKJ is working with here. If this is it does say another universe, another time. I find that a little bit confusing. Are we talking about a Jon Stewart in another universe and another time? Really? We're not talking about Jon Stewart in our universe? Why are we starting off with a Jon Stewart in another universe and another time? That's kind of confusing to me. So this isn't the story, a Jon Stewart story of Earth Designated Zero, the mainstream DC universe. This is another universe in another time. I'm a little bit confused there. Not that I mean, maybe this is somehow going to overlap into our universe, but then is there going to be two Jon Stewarts? Which there already are two Jon Stewarts. There's one in the dark sector at the end of Jeffrey Thorne's run, and then there was one in the main in the normal universe. There was technically two already. So now are there three? I'm actually confused, and I'm surprised PKJ has done it this way. The art's fantastic. There's a lot of action, but it's not clear to me where this is going right now. But I am interested, and there's a lot of action here. And PKJ, he did that with Warworld. Warworld started off kind of slow, but it built to a pretty exciting climax, in my opinion. I quite enjoyed it, and I think he's playing that same kind of game here with the same approach here with Jon Stewart Green Lantern. So I'm prepared to give him quite a bit of slack on it because he's shown that he can do that. He's shown that he can weave a tale. And so, fingers crossed. And I really like the visuals that Montos gives Jon Stewart on that final page is pretty cool, along with Adriana Lucas's colors.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough about how fantastic the art is. There's no question the art's gorgeous. So speaking of art and horror, next book is Sandman Universe Nightmare Country, The Glass House #3. James Tynion is the writer, Lissandro Esterin on art, Patricio Delpeche does the colors, Simon Boland on letters. Man, the more I read this, again, I'm not the biggest horror guy. Nightmare Country, I wasn't sure what to think when we first started reading it, but it's James Tynion. He's a writer. He's really leaned into the horror genre over the last few years since he's gotten away from superhero comics. It's clear that's where his passion lies right now, and he's doing a fantastic job. And so I really got pulled into the first Nightmare Country volume, and it ended up being a really good story. When this one started, we weren't even sure how it tied into the first story, other than the same writer and same artist. But between this girl that was killed, and then the witch, what's her name again?
Thessaly, yeah.
Between those two things, it's been wonderful. And to find out that this, for lack of a better term, this girl, she's kind of like, it's a club. It's not really a stripper, but this club where people can go and live out their most depraved fantasies. To find out that was this girl, the girl that got killed, to find out that was her roommate. Again, it pulls it all together. It pulls it in, and it ends up being just so interesting what's going on. So it's another one of these books where I think at the end you go back and you reread it and you see the seeds that were planted early on, and it makes for a wonderful story. And then again, you add in characters that longtime readers of Sandman are going to be more familiar with, like Corinthian. I haven't read all that stuff. There's something for returning readers as well. So between the connection with Flynn and her roommate and this Max guy having, fallen in love with that roommate, there's so much depth here. And the art by Esterin, it feels like they're getting even more sort of familiar with the tone of the story, because I felt like the art here, it was a subtle shift from previous issues. it felt a little more dialed in to like the tone of the story and what Tynion is trying to get across here. So it's not that the art has been bad by any stretch, but to me, this art was the best art of the series so far. So again, I'm really enjoying it. It's interesting, kind of the philosophical questions that are being raised, and just hopefully these people that are outright depraved and evil are going to get their comeuppance in the end. But I thought it was pretty interesting. The Lucian character that shows up that kind of has a back and forth with the Corinthian as well. Again, I got the impression that that's a character that longtime Sandman readers are going to be familiar with. So probably, from their perspective, they're getting a little more context out of that exchange between the Corinthian and Lucian than I did. But that being said, I still found that exchange to be interesting, and I'm finding myself really interested in the Corinthian as a character. They've clearly done horrible things in their past. And maybe they're a villain, maybe they're an antagonist would be a better term, because it seems like they live in that gray area. And those are where the most interesting characters for me live, because it's all about personal motivation and appealing to their better nature. But maybe this guy doesn't have a better nature. I don't know. One thing I do know is my wife absolutely is terrified by any images of him, because the teeth as eyes, that freaks her out 100%. Like I could see a cool image and be like, I want to show it to her, and she'll like close her eyes. She'll be like, no, I can't do it. Can't look at it. She's very susceptible to nightmares from any sort of horror type things. So anyway, what'd you think of the latest issue here of Nightmare Country?
Well, I like the way that things are all tying in. There's no question that I don't know if it was absolutely clear to me. I didn't know that. I mean, really, there's a connection really between the Dead Boys we've been reading, Nightmare Country, and then of course the Nightmare Country, the Glass House, and they're all sort of connected here. And yet, I will say that this Nightmare Country, the Glass House, is, if you're reading just this volume and not the first volume, you might be a little bit lost. There might be some confusion. But for those that have, like me, I mean, you and I review it anyway, but I've been buying this series anyway, just because on the strength of James Tynion, because he's more than earned my faith with everything he's written, quite frankly. And I like the fact that this new character, this Max character, is a sort of an employee of this corporation, and this leader of this corporation is this Teague character, and this one particular character is prophesizing the end of the world, presumably connected to, I'm assuming, some Armageddon or the devil. And meanwhile, the Corinthian senses something is up, and Corinthian's soul was sort of burdened by the Sandman. Corinthian can't kill anybody or take any aggressive action against any force without the consent of this woman that was who's now in the form of a cat. And meanwhile, this woman's roommate Kells is basically now an undead prostitute that Max is in love with. And as crazy as what I just said sounds, this all works together to weave a narrative of moving toward Armageddon. Corinthian knows he's got to stop it. And this Max Lee character is someone that has a way into this corporation, and they're actually writing the story of this woman that was killed and ultimately whose soul was linked to the Corinthian. And there's this corrupt evil corporation, and the Corinthian...
that woman that was killed, her name is Flynn. She was the main character in the first book. And I forgot to mention one thing I wanted to mention that was brought up here is, like, why her? Why is she the linchpin? Why is she so important? Why is everyone, even though she's dead, she's in the form of the cat, why is everyone still hunting for her? Why did she have the ability to see monsters? Why were the I can't remember their names, but the thin and the fat.
Yeah, the agony and the ecstasy.
Yeah, why were they after her? She is so important, and we don't know why.
Yeah.
That's super interesting as well.
And what's interesting about that is, and thank you, it is Madison Flynn who's in the form of the cat, and she's the one with the Corinthian is trying to get to the bottom of things, because the agony and the ecstasy, they were two demons that are aware of what's coming, and it's linked to this evil corporation. At the end of this, Thessaly the witch shows up, and she's actually there, and she indicates that she's actually trapped in this room, and they have to finish writing the script for this movie, ironically enough, telling the story of Madison Flynn for a TV movie. This corporation is almost like a TV studio or like Fox News or something, I don't know, or Fox Broadcasting.
Yeah,
But it's
do you remember where was it a Thessaly? I know there's a Thessaly one shot coming, but if you remember, so
yeah,
she's in this room and she's disguised as the guy that got hired to be the screenwriter
yeah,
because he did a bunch of research and it was posting on social media about Madison Flynn and everything that was going on with her roommate and the dorm burning down and all the madness that was
mm,
around it. And I remember there was a one shot somewhere that talked about it, and Thessaly invites him to her house and then does like a ritual sacrifice and kills him to take his spot so she can get.
that's
And so
right.
that, yeah, but I don't remember where that was. But I do remember that.
Yeah,
She invited the guy, and the guy was like, very socially awkward and no social skills or whatever. And he was
yes,
all excited that Thessaly here's this hot chick, and
yeah,
he something's gonna go down, and then something goes down, you get killed, and we
yeah,
find this next. This comes after that for Thessaly. She's
yeah.
taken on his identity. She might even be wearing his skin. She peels the mask off. She's got some stuff on her face. Yeah, so just fantastic stuff from Tynan. It's so good.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention. I can't even remember where we read that, what one shot that was in, but it's in fact, ironically enough, it all goes to show you that all this will probably read much better as a trade because you and I are, we're intrigued by this story. Excuse me, but we do have to weave in all these stories from different that we can kind of vaguely not adequately recall. So we know that there's a great story there. So it would it's definitely going to read better as a trade. But it's a testament to the quality of the writing that we still remember the gist of it, and it's keeping us glued to the narrative to know how this is going to resolve.
Yeah, like again, I'm not a Sandman guy. I've never read any of that stuff, and yet I'm pulled in by what Tynan is doing. Like to me, he's one of the best writers working in comic. He was my writer of the year a couple years ago for the Comic Source Awards, and well deserved. And yeah, and again, part of the reason I'm reading this horror stuff now is because, like Rocky said, because it's Tynan. I loved his superhero work so much when he kind of away from that. And Nice House on the Lake. He was sharing that around the first issue with other creators and people whose opinions I trust were all raving about it. So of course I'm going to check it out. And then it was amazing, right? And then on the strength of that, you're like, man, what is it? Something is Killing the Children. Another title that I'm not reading it, but I hear only good things. So yeah, the guy is really at the top of his game right now. So,
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Next book we're going to talk about Static Team Up. Anansi, I think is how you pronounce it. Maybe Anansi. Now, apologies to the creators because there's no creator page here. But it's written by Evan Narcisse, Charles Stewart III, who's a member of the Milestone Initiative. We covered that their anthology last week. Charles Stewart III is the penciler. Jose Marzan Jr. does the inks. Luis Guerrero on colors. I can get all that from the front cover that has credits, but there's no letterer credited, so I'm sorry I can't give credit to the letterer. But whoever it is did a great job. I'll start off by talking about the art by Charles Stewart III. Milestone Initiative is for creators of color and kind of getting their feet wet, learning the ropes. Some of the people that are involved in the initiative have more experience than others. I don't know how much experience Charles Stewart III has, but this guy needs to be on a monthly book. Not because I wish the grind of a monthly deadline on him, but just because I want to see his art on a regular basis, because his art's fantastic. Very polished, very dynamic page layouts. The colors by Luis Guerrero work very, very well with what he does. There's a lot of the character Anansi. He's actually a character that showed up in the Static Shock cartoon at one point. This is his DC debut, so speculator alert. As far as comics go, and this character it goes back to the Akan, which is a cultural people, the Ashanti people, a culture and sort of a tribe of people from Ghana in Africa. and this has to do with their myths. Anansi being this spider, sort of mischievous. I don't want to say god, but kind of in that Loki sort of mold, if you will, from what I read, the research I did. So he's teaming up here with Static Shock, and I really liked the visuals that Charles Stewart III gave us when Asani's using his powers, because a lot of times it was spiderweb looking. Even when he's sort of flying through the air, he's like he's running, and he's stepping on little mini spider webs. It just looked fantastic. So attention to detail like that from Charles Stewart, I thought was great. The colors were great. And what I really liked was the feel that the story had in terms of it being connected to previous generations. For, a character of color like Static Shock, his ancestors having come from Africa, and it felt like it was adding something to Virgil Hawkins as a character, right? Like introducing him, and Anansi is telling him, hey, I can see your story. That's one of the powers Anansi has, is to see story threads, connections going back generations, and being able to follow people and see where their connections are in present time. So it felt like it was adding something to Virgil as a character in terms of broadening his horizons, so to speak. And I liked that. I liked that sort of heritage feel, legacy feel that it was giving to Static, to make him, feel the connection to his ancestors. I thought that was really, really interesting and done very, very well by the writer Evan Narcisse. So I really enjoyed this. I wouldn't say it's the most in-depth story in terms of, a villain. That part of it is sort of generic. But in terms of introducing Anansi to the DC universe proper and giving that feel of heritage and ancestry and what have you, I thought it knocked it out of the park. So overall, I thought it was pretty good. Pretty good. What do you think, Rocky?
I really like the character of Anansi. I'm completely unfamiliar with this character. This is the first time I ever read anything about this character. I never watched the Static cartoon. I absolutely love the concept of Anansi. If I didn't know better, I would think Anansi or Nancy, whatever, if I'm pronouncing it right. I would think that Grant Morrison created the character, only because I love the concept of the character of just being sort of, as Anansi himself says, I perceive the ethereal web of stories that surround every living thing and weave perception and reality together. That sounds so cool. It really does. What exactly does that mean? I don't know. How does that play out? You mentioned the web. You mentioned the art of Charles Stewart III, the way that he would draw the webbing, and the webs, each layer of the web, you could see different stories or different panels. It told within the web of one's life, because every life is a biography, every life is a story, and it's really a perfect interplay with Static, with Virgil Hawkins, because he really is a character that's becoming someone that's more he's being developed in the Milestone universe, and this Anansi character really building on Virgil Hawkins and telling him that, in another universe, in another story, you could have been a god. And of course, superheroes in the DC universe are often more mythological than in other comic book universes like Marvel, where they're more, the street level. DC heroes are more, and Milestone heroes are perhaps more mythological. And it's very well done here. I'm very curious. I in terms of where this Anansi character might go moving forward, because I sort of like the thematic, the metaphorical idea of Anansi in terms of what power set he might have, the way that he can perceive things and maybe help resolve various mysteries, because he can maybe see alternative versions of various stories in terms of how things are playing out. The way that he helps Static resolve the central plot in this issue, I think it works very well. Absolutely fantastic art. And, I got to say that we've reviewed a lot of Milestone. And one of the things that Milestone's been putting out, they've been putting out a lot of compilations lately that are $9.95, but there's a lot of comic book material in there, a lot of pages. And for comic books are expensive, but if you want to get a good handle and you just want to limit yourself to a couple comic book universes and enjoy the characters, the Milestone universe would not be a bad choice by any stretch of the imagination. I think DC's done a reasonably good job here, and there's a lot of fun to be had in the Milestone universe. And I think, unfortunately, it probably hasn't gotten the attention that it deserves. And this is a character that is not reviewed enough by comic book reviewers like yourself. So I know that other comic book YouTubers out there, I watch other YouTube channels in the review. I would like to see more people give Static a chance in the Milestone comic books, a chance in their reviews, because it really is a universe worthy of further attention.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I don't know why people would. I don't know if arbitrary or maybe it's just not a big enough footprint, but people are buying these Milestone books, and rightfully so, because they're high quality stories. All right. I'm curious if this might be the book that you said is trending downward. I guessed right with the Wildstorm being the one you're dropping it, but you kind of already were not on board with this title, so we'll see if I'm right. But anyway, Superman Lost Book 4. Christopher Priest is credited with plot and script. Carlo Puculian is credited with plot and art. Jason Paz handles the inks. Jeremy Cox on colors. Willie Schubert on letters. This was not my favorite issue of the series so far. It felt a little bit like a step backwards. That being said, the emotionality is still coming through on this story. It's sort of strange. This is an interesting book to talk about. We know that Superman was trying to stop the entire Earth from being sucked into a black hole. An alien ship crashed into the ocean on Earth. It was powered by singularity, had some sort of singularity engine, so basically a black hole engine. And in trying to compress the singularity and prevent this disaster and Earth being sucked into a black hole, Superman himself was thrown far, 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 far away. So forget about the whole Philip Kennedy Johnson dialing up his powers, where space and time basically had no meaning for him, which is the power level I love to have my Superman at. That's not the case here, and he doesn't know how to get home, and he's out there. And in the first issue, he's already home. He comes home just a few minutes after he left, in terms of Lois's perspective. But from Superman's perspective, he's been gone for decades. So it kind of jumped around at first, and I wondered, okay, is this going to be the story of Christopher Priest, whose stories can be really broad in scope and so big that sometimes he has to take shortcuts, and we as readers feel a little lost at times? Is this going to be him jumping around and sort of addressing all sorts of different disasters in the galaxy as he makes his way home? Well, maybe not. Maybe that's sort of what I thought. But now we've gone backwards, because even last issue, when he ran into the space dolphins that the Lobo series back in the 90s made so famous, it felt like that was maybe what was going to happen. Instead, we've gone backwards. He's been gone. Superman himself has gone back to the planet he refers to as Kansas, and he's basically built himself a replica of the Kent farm in the part of the planet that is contaminated by oxygen, because the people that live there, they breathe carbon dioxide. So it's an interesting dichotomy, and it's an interesting juxtaposition with Superman meeting up with the people the alien race that rescued him in the first place when he was out there, first thrown all the way across the galaxy or universe or whatever. And they are there trying to make sense of what's going on with the world. They believe that they're basically scavengers. They go around the universe collecting scrap and reusing it. And there are people that don't want to acknowledge the fact that their society is dying. The rest of the people on the planet now live underground because of the issues with the environment. These people they don't want to give in. They don't want to acknowledge the fact that their climate is changing and the atmosphere has become toxic. Their way of life is going to end relatively soon, within a few decades. And so the other people, and Superman believes that the people underground sold out the people that are remaining on the planet. That's not the case. Just like the people underground are like, we're letting them do whatever they want to do. They can live their lives. We're not going to force them to come and be safe underground with us. But as a consequence of that, these scavengers are going to come in and they're going to harvest whatever they can, because these people are dead in 20 years anyway. And Superman, this is a complex sociological problem. But for Superman, it's simple, right? Like, he sees life. He's going to protect life. Even though these aliens are like, hey, we'll take you back home. We'll drive you around the parking lot, is how they put it. we'll drive you around the parking lot and drop you off at Earth. Superman doesn't care about that. He wants to save these people. So maybe it's a smaller story than I thought. Doesn't explain why it took him so long to get home. In the end, maybe he's just that far away, and if he has to get back home under his own power, it could take that long. So interesting story from Christopher Priest. To Rocky's point, I know it always bugs him when we're 4 issues in, you don't know where a story is going. And I every time I think I know where the story is going, Priest takes a turn and we go somewhere else, which is not really that uncommon for a Christopher Priest title, if I'm being honest. But I'm enjoying the ride. And what I absolutely love too is the Pagulian art. The Pagulian, this to me, like previously, Carlo Pagulian, my favorite art of his, favorite thing he ever worked on, was also with Christopher Priest. His Deathstroke run was gorgeous. This is a level up from that. Seeing Superman in the white, seeing the awesome splash pages, seeing these alien landscapes, the colors by Jeremy Cox, who often works with Pagulian, are fantastic. Like, even if I wasn't enjoying the story, I'd buy this book just for the art, because the art is that good. It's so fantastic. Anyway, am I right? Is this the one that you're like, it's trending down? Is this the one you're thinking of?
Actually, no. I'm actually. It's not. Well, it's remain level to me. It's not trending down. What saved this for me is it's going. It appears to be going in a direction, and it might not continue to go in this direction, but it's going in a direction where, I've said this before, I'm a sucker for a good metaphor. Tell me a story, make me think, challenge the way I'm thinking a bit. And I love the fact, and you touched upon it, Superman is delving right into, everyone always thinks that Superman, he's apolitical. It's not about politics with Superman. Bullshit. Superman is right into politics here, but he jumps to the heart of the matter. This is Superman. He's on a planet where half the planet has their head in the sand. And for whatever reasons, because they're religious, because of their way of life, they're ignoring climate change because of their own way of life. And there's another more elitist part of society on this planet that he calls Kansas that ignores the other half. And they're going to save themselves. The contractatios, this alien race that pops by that Superman's dealt with before, they tell him, look, this planet's going to be dead in 20 years. This planet's going to explode, and we can't save the people on this planet. They're idiots. They got their head buried in the sand. They won't even listen to reason. And even if we told them what's going to happen to their planet, they still wouldn't do anything because they're that stupid. I mean, this is the attitude of these contractatios. Now, let's be blunt. Let me be very blunt here. This is how cruel we can be in this divisive political world that we live in. Well, let's take the United States, for example. We got left versus right. The left doesn't like the right doesn't like the left. They each accuse each other of having their head in the sand, of being retards, of being idiots, of being hate mongers, of ignoring reality, of being, ignoring science, back and forth. Superman does not believe in the prime directive. Superman would disagree with Picard. If you tell Superman, well, no. I mean, if you were to apply the Star Trek Prime Directive to this planet, you'd say, well, no, I guess the citizens on this planet, they can all die because their planet's exploding and they reserve the right to choose to stay and die on their planet. And if they're dying because culturally that's what they believe. Superman, no. I save lives. That's what I do. I save lives. That's what I do. I don't just let people die. And so this is controversial if you draw it to its natural extension. This is Superman defying what you could view as a prime directive. Because this one individual, this elite person on the planet that Superman's talking to, he has a point when he says to Superman, look, we've tried to reason with these people. We've tried to talk with them. They don't want to talk with us. So fine, screw it. We're hiding underground. At least we're going to save ourselves. We can't save them. If people aren't going to, if I can't reason with people, we give up on them. Enough is enough. Now, a lot of people have that attitude. We certainly know a lot of people that have that attitude in the world we live in. And how does Superman deal with that? Well, Superman refuses. Well, to Superman, maybe Superman is naive. Maybe he's a little bit more black and white. But Superman finds a way. He's not like you can contrast Superman's attitude with what the group is called. I love their names here. They're called the contractatios. These creatures that are basically that tell Superman that that sooner or later this planet's going to explode. We can't help these people. we would need a herd of cattle just to drag them out of their reality denial. That's what these contract ratios view these people on this planet, is that we could spell out their fate and they still wouldn't do anything. That's how stupid these people are. That's how they view that. They're stupid people. We're not going to save them. They don't listen. We're not going to try. Well, Superman is the opposite of that. Now, if you can't see parallels to our world and what Christopher Priest is trying to draw here, then I don't know what to tell you. And so that might be a reason why some people might be turned off by this story. But it's what actually drew me to it, because I like what Christopher Priest is doing here. He's not saying this is our world. He's just saying this is this world, and can you see any similarities? And by the way, this is how Superman's going to handle it. And at the end of this issue, it looks like he might get some help from a Green Lantern, a very attractive-looking Green Lantern from that particular sector of space. And it's interesting. I don't know who that Green Lantern is. I thought maybe it was I can't remember her name, but in any event, I believe it's a new Green Lantern, and I don't know who that would be, but it's interesting, and I'm really curious to see where this is going. And it's Christopher Priest is making a statement here, and he's putting Superman in a very political situation, and I'm going to be interested to see how Superman resolves the issue.
Yeah, this Green Lantern, I'm glad you brought her up.
Well, Jessica Cruz, that's what it reminded me of. Jessica Cruz, the Green Lantern.
She has red skin, which made me think of Sornik,
right?
Astro's daughter, but clearly not her either. Katma too, another Karigian.
Right.
Same races. Sinestro's been dead for years, so I don't know. The only thing, I mean, you're right in saying it's meta and not putting any words in Christopher Priest's mouth, but the planet is called Kansas. The Midwest of the United States does tend to be pretty.
Yeah.
So, yeah, these people are not real smart. But you're right. I mean, Superman, he's trying to save them from themselves. It's a noble effort. He's more noble than I would be. I kind of, I mean, as much as I love Superman, it's like these people won't face reality. What can you do, right? It's a tough question. I wish I knew the answer to that. I could maybe solve the political unrest of the United States if I knew how to make people acknowledge what is reality, but yeah. I can't do it. So anyway, moving on to Waller versus Wildstorm Book 2. You want to talk about a confusing narrative or oblique writing. It's written by Spencer Ackerman, who's a political journalist. I think he's written some novels. I'm not 100% sure, but definitely has covered sort of the intelligence beat as a journalist for years. His co-writer is Evan Narcisse, who we just talked about on the Static Book. Jesus Moreno handles the art with a help from Vicente Fuentes on inks for pages 9 through 26. Michael Atea on the colors, Dave Sharp on the letters. Give us your thoughts on this, Rocky. What do you think?
Well, I want to say that Spencer Ackerman and Evan Narcisse as writers, they are very much weaving a tale of espionage here. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of talking heads. There's a lot of talking that's going on. And I think that probably the biggest criticism that one can have here is, despite what I think is a really great story, there's a lot of thought that's gone into the plot here. And I think the plot's pretty cool. It's just being told to us more than it's being shown to us. There's not that much action here that I would normally associate with this kind of story. We've over the years, over the decades, we've gotten a lot of Suicide Squad stories where we got a lot of cool action interspersed with a lot of the espionage. This is far more of the dialogue and the machinations and the conversations between the various characters as opposed to actual action. It's interesting that there's a character, Yamiko Nakamura, who is, at least in the mainstream DC universe, Jay Nakamura's mother. This starts off with Amanda Waller, who is one of the heads of Checkmate, working alongside Adeline Kane, who is the wife of Deathstroke. She's made a deal with this Yamiko Nakamura, who is soon to be the leader of Gamora, and is selling her some high tech. So just to summarize there's a lot that's said here. I can summarize it like this. Jackson King knows that Amanda Waller and Adeline Kane are betraying Checkmate and are betraying the United States of America. They're committing treason. And how are they doing that? They're orchestrating the sale of metahuman technology, and they're experimenting on metahumans around the world, and they're doing it for their own financial gain. And Amanda Waller, in typical Amanda Waller fashion, you want to talk about a hypocritical bitch. Amanda Waller is a complete bitch this issue. She actually believes the horse shit that's coming out of her mouth in this issue. And Jackson King won't have any of it. And Jackson King rightly has her set up. He's got her dead to rights, as well as Adeline Kane. And he sets up Adeline Kane, and he basically has a plan to basically blame as much of the plan as much as he can on Amanda Waller. And she deserves it, because Amanda Waller denies it. She has plausible deniability. But the fact is, she's harmed children. She's hurt children. She denies it. She claims that she's pointing fingers at Adeline Kane, the wife of Deathstroke. Adeline Kane is the one who experimented on her own husband, Slade Wilson, to turn him into Deathstroke. And Amanda Waller justifies everything she does because this is the new Cold War. This is a series that takes place in the 1980s, where the Soviet Union is about to fall and America is still the superpower, and they want to control the new Cold War. And the new Cold War will involve trading weapons, and those weapons are metahumans. And the weapons that they sell, Amanda Waller spells it out here. Her plan. And it's really her plan, and she basically admits that she's at the forefront of all of it, and then pulls back and then points fingers at others. Her plan is to create debt, get other countries indebted to them, get this Nakamura character, one of the leaders of Gamora, get them indebted to the U.S. for this metahuman technology, and then manipulate countries moving forward into the future by their debt, saying, because if you get them indebted to you financially because of you're doing all this metahuman weapons trading, that's how you manipulate the world. That's how America stays in control. And of course, Amanda Waller, in her own way, justifies it. Of course, metahumans are a threat. So Amanda she's a control freak, and she's a complete bitch this issue. And ultimately, Amanda Waller does have a backup plan. And while Jackson King in this issue arranges for her ultimate arrest, Amanda Waller happens to have footage that convinces other members of the Wildstorm that Jackson King at one time betrayed them and ended up killing another character called Michael Cray, who was Deathshot, or whatever the hell his name is. But in any event, at the end of the day, Jackson King is rescued by Stormwatch, and so I think this is headed toward Jackson King leading Stormwatch against Amanda Waller and Wildstorm, and I think that's where this is headed. It's again, I love the plotting. It's going to end. I think the idea is that Jackson King wants to get Lois Lane. Lois Lane was introduced in the first issue, and to basically orchestrate the taking down of Amanda Waller. Now, you and I both, we joke, I know how much you hate Amanda Waller. She's an overused character in the DC universe, but an overused character is also at times a sign of a very interesting character, and there's a reason why she's well used. She's a character we love to hate, and we love to see her get defeated. Will Amanda Waller ultimately get defeated in this Black Label story? I don't know. I have my doubts. I don't think anyone's ever really defeated Amanda Waller, but who knows? Jackson King might be on the way to do precisely that. The only one who knows at this point are the writers, Specker Ackerman and Yvonne Narcisse. But Jesus Marino on the art did a really good job. I just wish I wish the writers gave him more action sequences to illustrate, because this was a story that was more told to us than shown. What do you think?
Yeah, it's been that way all along. It's sort of what I don't like about it. Like, what's so interesting about it, right, is you talk about these comic book stories and how fantastical they are. But Spencer Ackerman, having sort of lived in that world, covered that world of espionage and intelligence and foreign relations all around the globe for a long, long time. A lot of times truth is stranger than fiction, right? So there is a sense of accuracy, if you will, to this in terms of betrayal. And you think, oh, that couldn't really happen. It's probably based on things that actually did happen. And yeah, maybe it's metahumans rather than bullets or grenades or explosives, but this type of trading, this type of arms dealing, is 100% the world that he has covered. Like I said, for a long, long time. So there is a real sense of authenticity here, and so I like that. What I don't like about it is ultimately, with all the betrayals and you can't trust anybody and whatever, it's really in a lot of ways sort of, if I'm being honest, the fact that you can't trust anybody and you never know who's telling the truth. You never know who's not. And what does that say about us as a race, as a nation, as a society? And that's all just really, really depressing. So this is not any sort of positive story. And it's one of those stories where I think there are no good guys, right? There's just degrees of how much do you suck, right? Amanda Waller sucks more than anybody, but Jackson's, no angel either. He's not a likable character. He's not somebody you root for. Yeah. So at the end of the day, nobody's relatable. No, I don't have any root for. It's sort of like watching a train wreck, right? Like you're just watching to see what's going to happen, not because you're hoping for any particular outcome. You're just hoping that, I don't know, that they all get blown up. I don't know, some sort of Mexican face-off at the end, and Amanda Waller pulls a pin on a grenade, bluffing, thinking that, they won't shoot me if I'm holding this explosive, and they do, and they shoot her, and whatever. You are right about Amanda Waller. She's a character that we're beginning to love to hate. I've disliked her for a really long time. It's almost getting to the point where I don't hate her anymore, though. It's almost getting to the point where I just don't care. And that's where you've crossed the line, DC. If you like a character, somebody like Harley Quinn, she becomes super popular. You can sell books, right? You can sell books if people love Harley Quinn and it's a Harley Quinn book. If people can't stand Amanda Waller and they want to see her get her comeuppance, they want to see justice served and Amanda Waller be defeated, to a lesser degree, you can sell books based on that. But if you use somebody so much and they're just completely irredeemable and a total scumbag, and you keep bringing them back time and time again and shove them down people's throats, guess what? You just stop caring. And that's almost to the point I am with Amanda Waller, where I'm just not going to read stories she's in anymore. She shows up more than the Joker now.
Yeah.
It's too much.
We won't be able to review any DC comics if we avoid them all with Amanda Waller in it.
It's ridiculous. Like, can you not come up with another character? Like, it's and she has become so unlikable. Like, I don't even want to read anything she's in anymore. It's really getting to that point. So, not that DC's going to listen to me, but you would hope that. And maybe it's not. We point the finger at DC. Maybe it's not them. Maybe it's the writers that just. I don't know. Editorial has to take some ownership though and say, hey, here's a pitch. You want to use Amanda Waller? Don't. There's too much Amanda. Just don't. Anyway, moving on. We have a reprint book out this week. It's called DC Pride Through the Years #1. It reprints Flash number 53, which was groundbreaking at the time because it was early to mid 90s. That was still when the Comics Code was around. You weren't really supposed to, talk about homosexuality in comics. William Meisner Loebs was the writer. Greg LaRocque on pencils. Jose Marzan Jr., we talked about him earlier on the Milestone book. He was inking for DC back then as well. Glenn Whitmore on colors. And this Flash 53, this is where the Pied Piper comes out to Wally West. He doesn't exactly handle it the best. Yeah, so the next reprint is Detective Comics number 854, Elegy Part 1. This is in Detective when Kate Kane, Batwoman, took over as the star of the book. Greg Rucka's the writer. Amazing, amazing art by J.H. Williams III. To me, this is really the book that put Williams on the map. He had done previous things with Alan Moore, America's Best Comics, and this and that. But this was a mainstream book. It really got him a lot of attention. Dave Stewart on colors. Todd Klein is the letterer. And then from the recent Supergirl Rebirth series from Steve Orlando, it's Orlando and Vita Ayala as writers. Jamal Campbell is the artist. The art is so spectacular in this issue. Carlos M. Mangual is the letterer. And this has to do with a character that befriended Supergirl, that was struggling in high school with being non-binary, and it really showcased one thing that Steve Orlando really believed about the character. I remember talking to Steve at WonderCon when DC Rebirth was first announced, and he was announced as being on the book, and he was saying that Supergirl's true power was her compassion and her empathy, and this story really kind of showcases that. And then there is a new story that's not a reprint. Alan Scott, the Green Lantern, past prologue from writer Tim Sheridan. Cian Tormey is the artist, Matt Herms on colors, Louis Gattoni on letters. And it's going back, and I won't say that it's rewriting Alan Scott Green Lantern history, because it's from before he was even Green Lantern. But it's talking about his time in the Army Corps of Engineers, and apparently he had a same-sex relationship way back then, and it's diving into some of that. And that will eventually lead into the Alan Scott Green Lantern series that's coming later this year in October. So I don't have anything else to add about these stories. A lot of them I read when they came out. I think I'd read all three of the reprints previously, but it was good. It was good, especially that Supergirl story, to be reminded how great it was. The Alan Scott story, I'm curious what this Green Lantern series is going to be like in October, but what we got here wasn't particularly interesting to me, not because it's hints of this, or not even hints, it's out and out giving us a story of the same-sex relationship that Alan Scott had to keep a secret. You can imagine, it's in the early 40s, and he's in the military. There's no way he can, be sort of out and be his true self. He would might even have been illegal at that time. I'm not sure, but he definitely would get kicked out of the military. That's not the reason I didn't find it interesting. The reason I didn't find it interesting is not much happened. It focuses all on the relationship. There's no superhero action. There's not really any action at all. So it comes across as a little schmaltzy and soap opera. And I love Alan Scott Green Lantern. I want to see Alan Scott be Green Lantern. This relationship stuff for him, it's less interesting to me. So anyway, anything to add about this issue, Rock?
Just that I do find it interesting, a little bit odd that I don't know. I guess DC just wanted to remind people that they've told stories with LGBTQ characters over the last 20 years. Did people not know that? I just thought this was a really odd choice the stories are fine. I think I even own all of them, to be honest. But I really think that if this was sort of a way to prop up the price point to try to sell a Green Lantern story as a prelude to the Green Lantern series, I just thought it was really an odd choice. I don't think that people necessarily, I don't think you're necessarily going to get much out of the two other stories unless unless you're, well, frankly, even if you're gay or a member of the LGBT community, there's plenty of DC pride. It's just we've gotten an influx of those lately with all similar messaging, and they're all well and good, I guess. Just choose your hero. What I find more interesting is I'm interested in Alan Scott Green Lantern. I'm definitely not interested if they just want to tell a love story about Alan Scott and make that. I'm infinitely less interested in the story now. I'm just going to come right out and say it. If you're telling the history of Alan Scott, drawing him, naked in the shower in World War I, laughing and giggling and holding a gay man in his bed in the story, and this is oh sure, this is a love story. So now collect Alan Scott Green Lantern miniseries. And when you're telling people that this is the love story, that doesn't sound like it's going to be a superhero story. It sounds like it's actually going to be exactly what you say it is. You say it's going to be a love story. That's what it is. And I always find it really odd. And Steve Orlando did this, for example, in the Midnighter series. There were scenes that were just graphically, I thought was inappropriate, but I guess they wanted to push the envelope because they were dealing with gay characters. This is another one where I just find it a little bit off. And you don't necessarily see that, although I guess you do see that with Harley Quinn and Ivy, but you see that with LGBT characters, and surprisingly enough, you don't see a heck of a lot on. I'm just really surprised by that particular focus. I want to see an Alan Scott story. I mean, I want Alan Scott, his adventure to be grounded in World War II. I want his adventure to be grounded in this new Red Lantern. I want that, this Crimson Flame. Is that related to the Red Lantern? Jeff Johns is hinting at a Red Lantern and that mystery of it. I don't want it to be focused on a love story per se, and that's not what's going to pull me into the story. This was a strategic error, and this is misreading the audience, in my view. And I know it's a fine line, and I know, hey, it's just my opinion, but I just think if you want to attract both, imagine what you could attract if you told an epic, kick-ass adventure tale here instead of wanting to focus on surprise, surprise, Alan Scott had some issues when he was younger because he was a gay man in the army. We kind of already known that. It's been repeated. In fact, it's pretty much been universally almost the only thing we've been told about Alan Scott in the last 5 years. If you're a DC reader, why don't you broaden that a little bit? I mean, is that all he did? I mean, he was a superhero too. Tell me the superhero story, and if you tell me an awesome superhero story, and he happens to be gay, that's cool. That's fine. But to me, they're getting it backwards. But I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I absolutely don't care that they have changed his sexuality. Don't care at all. But I don't care if we get plenty of this Johnny character in the upcoming series as well. But it's got to be balanced, right? Like again, like if I want to read a love story, I'll go and pick up. There's plenty of romance comics out there. I don't read them for a reason because that's not where my interests lie. So it's got to be balanced. I don't care if the romance is in there, but you got to give me the hero stuff too. And all we got in this was relationship stuff, and then a big red laser coming out of the ocean at the end. So, yeah, I guess we'll see how it all plays out in the end. All right, last book of the ones we're talking about in detail: Multiversity. Harley Screws Up the DCU, issue number 4. Frank Thierry on words, Logan Farbar on pictures, Ferran Delgado on letters. Haven't read any of this. Continue to not read any of this. So it's all you, Rocky. What'd you think?
Oh, wow. Okay. Right. Well, the premise of this story is that Harley she does in fact screw up the DC universe. How does she do that? Well, there was a point in time where every issue is just how she has screwed up the origins of another member of the Justice League. She screwed up initially the origins of Superman, then Flash, and that was in the previous 3 issues. Building up to that, and then building up to this issue, she screws up. It shows how she screwed up the origins of Wonder Woman. She ends up on Themyscira, and as Wonder Woman, of course, was born of clay during one of her origins, unfortunately, Harley Quinn steps on the sandcastle that is not, in fact, a sandcastle, but is, in fact, the young clay Diana, and she ends up killing Diana, who will become Wonder Woman, obviously pissing off her mother, Hippolyta. And while I guess there's humor on the surface of that, the problem with this series I find is Frank Thierry, who's I think while he's got an interesting premise here, he certainly doesn't have enough to drag this out for 6 issues because it's extremely predictable. I mean, it's the same plot thread that Harley Quinn, surprise, surprise, ends up conveniently, just somehow very conveniently, ends up being transforming and transporting in multiple parts in the universe, happen to arriving exactly at the opportune moment to ruin the origins of all these heroes. So it's very forced and contrived to begin with. And frankly, I hate to say this, but I just don't find it funny. It's not funny. And it's not goofy enough. And I wish it was. And Starro wants to control the multiverse, and all the Starros, they don't mind what Harley Quinn is doing and screwing up the multiverse, because it was Harley screwing up the multiverse and destroying the Justice League by destroying them when they were at central points of their origin that allowed the Starros to take over the multiverse to begin with. And then, but in any event, this is Harley Quinn's undoing the damage that she caused, along with the help of another multiversal iteration of herself, and then ends up Aquaman as well. She screws up Aquaman's origin, and uh, you know, just and then it ends with her ending up in Gotham City. Well, she'll next issue, I'm sure she'll screw up Batman's origin, which will be issue 5, and then she'll resolve Batman's origin, I'm sure, at the end of next issue, and that will result in issue 6 with her battling the Starros, and it's all well, it's all well and good, but it's nothing. It's we just see too much of these types of stories for Harley Quinn. This is past the shelf life for these types of stories. It's hot. We're well past the time where what we need for Harley Quinn are stories that that take the character seriously. And if anybody listening, particularly anybody listening who fancies themselves a writer and says, "What do you mean take Harley Quinn seriously?" If you don't know what I mean by that, I don't want you writing Harley, because she needs to be taken more seriously, and then take her very seriously, take the continuity seriously, and then take a step back and tell a good story. And for some reason, there seems to be this excuse that writers make when they write Harley. They write her zany, and they focus so hard, trying so hard to be funny, they forget that there's supposed to be a story somewhere to be told. And this is just a prime example of that continued failed attempt. And in any event, it's a miss for me.
You summed up why I'm not reading this 100%.
Yeah.
You summed it up perfectly. The problem with Harley Quinn, they try so hard to be funny and zany, they forget to tell a story. And I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't read this. So anyway, that's it for the single issues. There is one other single issue out this week. If you're a Scooby-Doo fan, we've got the Batman and Scooby-Doo Mysteries issue number 9. And then as far as collections go, it's a banner week for comics that Rocky loves. Batman and the White Knight, Beyond the White Knight hardcover. That's the Sean Gordon Murphy verse with the latest ongoing series or mini series that he had, 10 issues or whatever it was. It was really, really good. We reviewed it. We liked it. We recommend it. There is a Superman hardcover, Superman Camelot Falls Deluxe. This is Kurt Busiek on Superman, Carlos Pacheco, the late, great Carlos Pacheco, as penciler, inks by Jesus Moreno. It collects Superman. Again, this was before the New 52. Collects Superman issues 654 to 658, 662 to 664, 667, and Superman Annual 13. It's all about Superman against Intergang, and it's good classic stuff. Also collected this week at those. This is one of those books that I mentioned Rocky just absolutely loves. Speaking of absolute Dark Knight's Death Metal hardcover. So if it's not enough for you to read Dark Knight's Death Metal, you can have it in hardcover. You can have it oversized to see that fantastic Capullo art. Unfortunately, the Capullo art's sort of the high point of that story because the story's a bit of a mess. But if you like the Capullo art, or if you absolutely love seeing, I don't know, versions of Batman as a bat cave or a monster truck, maybe you'll give that a try. Another one of Rocky's more recent favorite series, Dark Crisis Young Justice from Megan Fitzmartin, also gets a hardcover. And then one of my and Rocky's favorites, the Teen Titans Academy series, is finally volume 2, collecting issues 6 through 15 of that interminable series with Red X shoved down our throat that made absolutely no sense. It gave us the Beast Boy Cyborg sharing the same body that has been completely forgotten and never explained how they're back to normal. So that's out this week as well. If you're so inclined, if you're into, I don't know, self-torture, that's out this week as well. So, yeah, definitely not high-quality collections this week. Other than that, Batman Beyond and Superman are worth your time. The other three, buyer beware.
So what's your pick of the week this week?
I really enjoyed Superman Lost. I thought Green Lantern was really good as well. But at the end of the day, in Spirit World, I gave some thought to. But at the end of the day, I forgot. I was going to say at the end of the day and make my pick, but then Static was really good too. But you know what? You may be picking Static. I'm going to go with Batman Incorporated because it was the first book I read, and that's the one that got me as soon as I finished reading it, texting you, going, "Holy crap!" Batman Incorporated, Ed Brisson, that moral dilemma, yeah, really really got me. But yeah, I mean, I think the other ones I mentioned are worthy as well. Spirit World was really really good. That Static Shock team up was great as well. So,
Yeah.
what's your pick?
Well, it was a toss up to me. I nothing really blew me away this week, but I like Batman Incorporated for the reasons you gave. But I'm gonna go out on I'm gonna give it just by a stretch. I'm gonna give it to Superman Lost, only
Ah,
because. No, only because of the questions that it asked. Let me be very clear. This is a series that could end up, really bottoming them out. It might continue to meander because it still needs to. It needs to have more of a story. But if it continues to force Superman to get involved and make tough decisions that we can't tell Superman stories with him making tough decisions here on Earth. We can't, because writers will not be able to get away with it. But Christopher Priest can get away with it if it's on another world, and he can push the envelope and maybe ruffle some feathers here, and I like it. He's making me think, and frankly, I got the most out of this here, as opposed to most of the other ones. The other ones were okay, but this one I thought was a little thought provoking in a way that poked fun at us, and I think rightly so. And when I say fun at us, I mean us as a society, as a world. And so I think it was a good issue.
yeah, and the art again has been absolutely fantastic throughout. So,
Yeah.
all right, everybody, that's gonna do it for this episode. Appreciate you joining us and for the support as always. Don't forget, if you're listening to us audio only, head over to YouTube. You can see our smiling faces and the art in these books as we talk about it. Rocky's channel is comics space boom exclamation point. Once you get there, you know what to do. Subscribe, ring the notification bell, leave some comments. All that helps us with coverage and accessibility. Conversely, if you've stumbled across us on YouTube, you're curious about the other audio-only content from the Comic Source, just go to wherever you get your podcast, do a search for the Comic Source, and subscribe. So appreciate you joining us as always, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.